Thanks so much for sharing your garden with us. Now we're going to be talking about two of the hottest trends in gardening, fairy gardening and terrariums. I'm joined by Sandra Killough from Bonnie's Greenhouse in Waco, Texas. Welcome back to Central Texas Gardener. Great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Now, I have to say, one of these trends, fairy gardens, has eluded me somehow, but I understand it is a rage in the United States.
It is.
It is. All right. So how did you get involved in this?
Well, Pinterest is real hot right now. It's a hot little app on your phone that you can get.
Right.
And all kinds of neat gardening tips and things.
Okay.
Well, we got a load of pottery in, and one of these clay pots was cracked perfectly like a fairy garden. So we made it up, and it was a big hit. And then I talked my husband into doing some more. And it wasn't real easy. He had to learn how to cut them, and so he cracked a lot of pots before he got it perfect.
Okay, and we'll be showing one of these pots in just a short while. But what are the ingredients, if you will, for we have some. We'll start by taking a look at one right here. But what's the concept here?
The concept is building a little world in a small container, a little garden, if you will. Some people do them around trees and old wheelbarrows and old broken pots. Anything you've got laying around, people are using.
Okay, so its own little fantasy world in essence.
Yes, like a dollhouse for adults.
A dollhouse for adults, all right. And who's doing this?
You know, we're having classes and we're having parents, moms and daughters doing it together. Grandparents are coming along. We've even had a man join our class. So we're having seeing a lot of different groups, age groups.
Okay, cool. And, you know, so is there, you know, obviously you can have miniature houses and things like that. What are some of the things that people are incorporating into their little worlds?
Things that, I had one lady that some rocks meant a lot to her that she on a trip she'd gotten, so she wanted to use those in her house. Pieces of your memory, you know, things that are important to you. You know, they're using houses, fairies, gnomes, anything you can come up with.
Okay, so they're just using their imaginations and creativity.
Yes.
Well, you mentioned the broken pots, and this is, I guess, a motif for the fairy gardens, right?
Yes, yes, definitely.
Okay, and kind of a cascading landscape in a sense.
It is, and you know, this particular one is an outdoor garden. It can be used in your shade patio anywhere, or your shade garden. And it's layers, it's stacked layers. I have an old birdhouse in there, and the little gnome is actually a salt and pepper shaker. Okay. So just whatever I can find goes in them. Okay,
well, it's recycling of a sort, but being very creative with it, and that's a lot of fun. The next one looks like a little red schoolhouse or something.
It's actually a chicken coop.
It's a chicken coop,
It's a chicken coop. I didn't have a chicken, so I just made it a little house and just decorated around it with the flag and pumpkins and, you know, Americana.
And obviously this is planted up with living plants. Yeah. And so what's the medium that you have in there to root all these things in?
Just good potting soil.
Simple as that.
Simple as that. We've got holes drilled in everything. Okay. For good drainage. Okay. And that's the key ingredient. You've got to have a hole for drainage, and we put holes in everything. Okay. And then good potting soil.
Yeah, I can see where this would be a fun project for a mom and daughter.
Yeah.
A lot of fun. I like the next one because this is just an old drawer.
It's an old drawer. I like to junk. I like to get stuff that's, you know, can be reused.
Right. Well, repurposed and in a very creative kind of way. What was your motif for that one?
I just found this drawer. I found a whole bunch of drawers at a garage sale and said, got to make something out of them. And it just comes to me at night.
Okay. So you put a little fence and
a little bicycle, you know, just whatever I can find goes in there.
Okay. Well, it's a lot of fun. I can see that you really enjoy doing this. Yeah. So this is, again, a hot trend that lots of families are engaging in. Now, the other thing we want to talk about are terrariums, and I remember, I think from the very first grade, or maybe even before that in kindergarten, having terrariums in my classrooms. So these have been around for a while.
Yeah, since the Victorian times. I did some research, and you know, in the Victorian times, every household just about had some type of terrarium.
And the concept of terrarium is really an enclosed little system, right?
Yeah, an enclosed little greenhouse type. Nowadays, they've come a long ways. You know, you can have open containers, closed containers. We've done some of the air plants in them. We've just really just whatever suits your taste, we can do.
Okay. Well, I remember when I was a kid actually creating something. I think we used saran wrap to cover the top of them. But they've gotten a little more sophisticated than that.
Yeah, I used a water bottle, one of the big 5-gallon water bottles for my first one in 7th grade. So yeah, they've come a long ways.
Right. Well, you've brought some beautiful examples of these, and one that I'm looking at right now, beautiful glass vase look to it, but lots of things planted up in it.
Yeah, that one is particularly done with all ferns. I want to just, all ferns. It'll do well in that environment. And then I added a little fairy to go in there to kind of do the fairy garden too.
Okay, so you've blended the two things there. And we'll talk more about the medium that you plant in there, because that's critically important, and you've brought some examples of that. Right above that, we have some little mini terrariums that are hanging in an old window frame. Again, a great example of recycling materials.
Yeah. I found that at a garage sale with the drawers. I've got to do something with it,
Yeah, well, very clever.
Yeah, and the Tillandsias are really important, have been really popular now. You can do anything with them.
Well, we'll talk more about the Tillandsias, because this, as you say, this is a very kind of practical plant to use in this kind of setting. So we'll zero in on those in just a moment or two. I do want to show some other This is another example of a terrarium, but this one is filled with beautiful succulents.
Yes.
I'm imagining you almost never need to water this.
Hardly ever.
Yeah.
Once I watered it the first time, it could be months before it needs to be watered again.
Right. That's the beauty of these things. There really isn't a closed system.
Yeah. And this one is actually open, but it still doesn't need much water.
No, not with those plants.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and again, it can be almost any different thing. And there's one over my shoulder here that is much more humid looking.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this, what are some of the plants in this one?
There's some little peperomias, a little jew in there, a little trailing jew, also a couple little ferns. So
okay, so the things that like the moisture,
the
a
moisture.
little bit more.
Yeah.
And when you're watering these, how often would you water something like that?
That particular one, I would hardly ever water it either, because it kind of makes its own moisture.
Okay, so the plants, just the natural breathing of the plants, if you will, kind of keeps the moisture enclosed in the system.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we mentioned Tillandsias, and you have a couple of these really cool little boxes that were specifically made for terrariums, I understand.
Yes.
And the Tillandsias are in there. And for people who don't know, Tillandsia is like a bromeliad, and related actually to Spanish moss, right?
Yep.
But these are much prettier than Spanish moss.
They are, and they all bloom, and they have a beautiful bloom. And they put off pups, which are the little plant that grows beside it, and that one will bloom next, where the mother plant blooms, and then these will bloom next.
And some of these don't even need a potting medium, do they?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And those are actually just sitting there on bark, and we'll mist them every once in a while.
So just occasional misting.
That's it.
That's it. Well, they're really beautiful plants, I think, to look at, and I can see why they're getting so popular, because it basically zero care and having something living in the house.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to mention how you layer in the soils in the terrariums. Now, there are different things that you use, and the base is always sand, right?
Right.
And obviously that provides very fast drainage at the very bottom.
Exactly.
Right. So what do you put on top of this?
Then I use pea gravel, or there I have some shells that someone brought me, and some type of shell or pea gravel.
All right. And then you also use sphagnum moss.
Yeah. The next, though, is the charcoal. Is the next step.
Charcoal.
Charcoal.
Okay.
And it has to be activated charcoal, like you use in an aquarium.
Okay.
It actually keeps the bacteria down, and it keeps it smelling fresh.
Okay.
And then you use the sphagnum.
Okay, got you.
That is actually to help your potting media not fall down on those pretty layers.
Oh, okay, I got you.
And then your potting soil.
Okay, and just regular old potting soil.
Good potting soil.
Oh, right, well-drained potting
Well-drained, yes.
Okay,
yes.
got it. Well, this is a very hot thing, as I mentioned. Lots of families are really enjoying doing this together with their kids and creating these little worlds. So we appreciate you coming down from Waco and sharing your expertise with us.
Well, thanks for having me.
All right, again, and that is Sandra Killough from Bonnie's Greenhouse in Waco, Texas. Thanks so much. And coming up next, it's our friend Daphne.